Nintendo.
With Animal Crossing New Horizons being out for over 8 months as the release of this video, people have had enough time to gather their full critique of the game, and the sentiment of New Horizons being not the best Animal Crossing game has been suggested by some. I've been playing Animal Crossing since 2005 with the North American release of Animal Crossing Wild World from the Nintendo DS. Since then, I've played every Animal Crossing game that's been released, and also went back and played Animal Crossing Population Growing, released in 2001. Now, while the time that I've put into these games may vary, I've definitely played enough of them to confidently discuss as to whether or not New Horizons is the best Animal Crossing game. Some aspects of the game are much weaker than in previous games, and some aspects are missing completely. Despite this, though, the things that Animal Crossing New Horizons does right might be enough to make up for this. Let's discuss. Let's try to get some perspective as to why people think that New Horizons is not the best Animal Crossing game. One of the biggest blemishes on this game is the lack of special NPCs. These include Brewster, Copper and Booker, Captain, Phineas, Katrina, Dr. Shrunk, Tortimer, Blanca, Lyle, Harriet, Pelly, Phyllis, Pete, Gracie, and several more. This is certainly upsetting and one of the biggest disappointments in the game for me. A lot of these NPCs have been staples of the franchise since the GameCube days. It's not like they were one-offs that never return. No, these are characters that fans have come to love whose services can still be useful in New Horizons. Or if their services are obsolete, then they can be repurposed into a new role in the game. For example, while the mail system in Town Hall may have been replaced by a card stand and a couple of very marketable faces, the Pelican Trio can still be used in ways that are fun and add reason to come back to the game every day. Plus, shooting Pete out of the sky would be fun too. Or Harriet could sell exclusive hair accessories. Captain can host island tours like in New Leaf, anything to make the game more fun. So the missing NPCs suck a lot. No denying that. What else does the game do wrong? Along the same lines of missing NPCs is the missing shops and buildings that have been prevalent in previous games. I wasn't a huge fan of the Main Street element in New Leaf. I quite liked having the shops randomly scattered around your island. I suppose they did this because the town sizes in New Leaf weren't big enough to accommodate that many buildings. But New Horizons has the biggest area as far as town size, so why are things like the police station missing? Katrina's tent? Shrunk's nightclub? Why have some NPCs downgraded to having stands that they set up as opposed to actual shops? Does it break the theme of it being a deserted island? I'm not sure, but I don't think people would mind if that vibe was broken for the sake of more developed islands. Also, why can Nook's Crannies only upgrade once? You used to be able to make this place an emporium in previous games, but in this game it's just a fancy shack with inventory that pales in comparison to older games. The dialogue in this game is the worst of the series. In fact, it seems to me that the dialogue in Animal Crossing peaked from the start and has gradually gone downhill. This, I assume, is because the series has shifted its focus more so on the designing and management of your own town or island, and less so on the community and small town feel of the older games. The charm of the older Animal Crossing games is the lively neighbors and personality they had. Going back and playing these older games made me realize that there was definitely some repetition and weak dialogue on occasion, but it's nothing like the walking random number generator robots that New Horizons has. I don't think it's nostalgia or childlike wonder that makes us think that older dialogue was good. No, the older games relied on interesting conversations with villagers because it didn't have the shiny things like New Horizons has to fall back on. I find the furniture variety pretty lackluster in this game. A lot of my favorite furniture sets are gone in favor of a more DIY-focused feel. I get it, but it's just not the furniture sets, rather a lot of the little seemingly random but still welcome pieces of furniture that made designing great. Not to mention a lot of public works projects from New Leaf didn't carry over into this game. Some of them were super nice and would be perfect for completing the island feel, but sadly, these got snubbed. Those are my big complaints, but here's some more minor ones that are maybe still a little subjective and petty, but still make me dislike the game more overall. The lack of ways to store turnips, DIYs, and flowers is insanely annoying. You can get creative and make a place for others to take your spare DIYs, but then Isabelle will complain that there's too much junk on the ground. You want to store your turnips in a way that's not ugly inside or outside your house? Once again, you can get creative, but with the same drawback. You have too many flowers? Are they overrunning your island? Too bad, you gotta sell them or you gotta give them away. I understand that starter houses are meant to act as built-from-scratch houses to match the deserted island theme, but man, they're boring. I wish there was a point in the game where they would have eventually upgraded to their real houses, or alternatively make a way for players to dictate how their houses look once they hit a certain friendship level, maybe. Lack of access to your storage on other islands sucks and makes the task of selling turnips even more treacherous than it already is, especially if you're in a long queue to sell. The hourly themes are fine, but that's just it. They're fine. I much prefer older games when they felt more like Animal Crossing. They all feel samey as well, and don't even get me started on the fact that the hourly themes don't even start until you get to Town Hall. Like, why? I think that tools breaking in Animal Crossing is fine, but why make us work so hard to obtain the DIYs for the gold tools only for them to break as well? Not to mention the fact that the only benefit to gold tools is more durability. In previous games, gold tools were always an upgrade from their normal variants. Also, will silver tools ever return? Being pretty uninformed as to the finer details of how online gaming is run, I can't really say why the multiplayer is bad on a technical level, but from a consumer level, it's slow, unintuitive, and what it does right in giving us stuff like dodo codes and a cute loading screen is completely undone by the fact that there's basically nothing special you can do on another player's island. No tours like in New Leaf, no super best friend privilege that can let others help decorate your island, and no cross-island storage access. There's a lot of wasted potential in New Horizons multiplayer. These shortcomings, among other things, is what I think New Horizons has done wrong, but for everything that it might have done wrong, I also think that there's plenty of redeeming things that make up for a lot of the negatives. So let's discuss why you could make the argument that New Horizons is the best game in the series. The level of customization that you have on your island is unprecedented in any previous Animal Crossing game. Nintendo first really embraced town designing in Animal Crossing New Leaf with the ability to commission public works projects to give your town some uniqueness and personality. Add to that the ability to change the theme of your bridges and your town buildings, sprinkle some bushes around your town, and yeah, New Leaf was a big step in town building, but if you were the mayor in New Leaf, then New Horizons made you a god. Putting furniture outside, conforming the shape of the land and the water to your liking, a multitude of paths, the ability to control where houses and buildings can go, not to mention that there's not nearly as much restriction in how and where you place these things like in New Leaf. All of these things have taken what New Leaf has gave us and turned it up to 11. The creative potential in this game is wonderful, and seeing as it's the main selling point of the game, I reckon Nintendo would do right by implementing more in future updates as well. I would love to see the building themes come back in New Horizons along with some of the public works projects that aren't in the game. So while not everything is in your control in New Horizons, it's far and away the most that we've ever had. Along the same line of customization is the much more diverse and inclusive character creator. As opposed to answering questions to arbitrarily decide what your character looks like when your town is created, you have the ability to choose how your character looks from a variety of skin tones, hairstyles, eyes, mouths, and face paints. You're even able to upgrade the skin tones and hairstyles as you play the game to add even more variety. While there's always more to be added in this department, it's certainly more than we've ever had in older games. Not to mention that the variety and customization options allows for more representation for people who play the game, thus furthering the sentiment that Animal Crossing is for everyone. Another option that was added to the start of the game is the ability to choose from Northern and Southern Hemispheres, which was never an option previously. Southern Hemisphere players were always expected to conform to the seasons of their Northern counterpart, but not for any longer. On top of just the character creator, the diversity in your ability to dress up is a lot better. This is only made better by the fact that the Able sisters have a fitting room to better suit your character to your liking. I'm aware of the quality of life shortcomings that this game has, but it's undeniable that it's far better in New Horizons than ever before. The most notable thing that I found when going back to old Animal Crossing games is just how little space you have for inventory and custom design slots. It makes you wonder how we ever even lived like this. 15 inventory slots and no quick way to change between tools is madness in comparison to this game. Despite your starting inventory being quite small, you can get 2 rows of extra room, along with a tool wheel upgrade to make it far easier to navigate your pockets. Stacking items was a thing in New Leaf, but in New Horizons you have more items that stack, and items that are stackable will auto-stack upon pickup, so convenience has never been better in Animal Crossing as it has in this game, but there's still more work to do. It only makes sense that being the latest iteration of the series means that graphically it is also the most pleasing. Now that's definitely true, but along with being the best looking game, the sound design in this game is also fantastic. From the more noticeable sounds like water flowing, the wind blowing, and the animalese, to the much less noticeable stuff like the footsteps on various surfaces, the sound of bugs flying away, the blips and blops of pickups and menu sounds, the game is just a pleasure to listen to. The game also boasts all the old KK Slider songs of previous games while adding a few new ones as well, and the different music players in the game will play the songs in different quality depending on whether it's an HD stereo system or a cheap radio. Another example of why the game is both visually and orally appealing. Villager hunting is something that I've always looked forward to doing every time a villager in my town moves out. It's nice for a couple reasons, these being that it gives me an element of control as to who moves to my island, but not total control in way of scanning and moving villagers in via amiibo. But it's nice to let RNG take the reins and see what villager has for me, and letting me choose on who I want to settle with. Secondly, it satiates the gambling part of my brain, where it makes me want to keep hunting for a better villager. It's like, yes, I really do like Savannah, but what if we get Punchy next? It's a great addition to the game, albeit a little tedious to acquire the Nook Miles tickets that are needed for extensive villager hunts. Yes, the museum gets its own category because it's just that good. Previous games have had museums that got the job done, but none of them blew me away like the one in New Horizons. So much creativity, so much satisfaction in filling the collections, and so many details that could leave you wandering around this place for hours. It takes full advantage of the different perspectives and angles to really make each piece stand out, and organizes all the exhibits in an orderly way as to not be confusing. I love the Nook Mile system that rewards you with an in-game currency for doing various things on your island. Some of those stamps that you can redeem for Nook Miles can be completed on your first day, while others may take years without time traveling. I love games that have stretch goals like this that are rewarding to not only work towards, but also give you a bonus for doing so. While part of me misses the badges that Phineas gave you in New Leaf, I feel like this is an objective upgrade to that. The only sore spot being that other people can't see the progress that you've made on your stamps like they could before. Call it a cheap or a cop-out answer, but one of the things that New Horizons has going for it more than other Animal Crossing games is the fact that it is still actively being developed. The shortcomings in this game can still be fixed, and I really do think that a lot of them will. I have a hard time believing that most of the previously mentioned NPCs that have been cut from the game won't return, and with some of them will come their shops and therefore new furniture and new clothing. Dialogue will be added in spurts and maybe even new villagers and new personality types. I think that a lot of the frustration that players have with quality of life will be ironed out. Hopefully multiplayer will get better. I really think that every update to this game has been a big positive. That is, in my opinion, the #1 thing that this game has going for it. It will only get better as the months and years go on. And just as I did with my complaints on New Horizons, here are some minor praises that I'll credit it for. While I still maintain that villagers in this game are bland, dull robots, it is nice to see them out and about wearing different outfits and doing different activities such as singing, yoga, exercise, and grilling. It doesn't make up for their lack of dialogue, but it is still something that makes me smile even 8 months into the game. The DIY system has its issues, but collecting and using materials for furniture that you want instead of having to catalog and wait for the next day for it to be delivered is a very nice and refreshing change. Add to that the seasonal recipes that make it so that there's always more DIYs to chase. Shooting stars in this game is so much better. It used to be where you wished on a shooting star and you would get a letter in the mail tomorrow from Wishy the Star. In this game though, star fragments wash up on your beach and you can use these for Zodiac DIYs that you get from Celeste. It's so much more exciting than getting a single piece of furniture in the mail the day after a meteor shower. The ability to pick up and move trees is such a wonderful change compared to chopping them down and replanting them where you want. Add to this, rocks used to be these immovable objects that you had to grin and bear if you didn't like their location. While it's tricky to get them precisely where you want them, you can just keep breaking them until they wind up in a spot to your liking. Weeds look so much nicer in this game, and add to the fact that they're actually a useful resource to collect. They made it so these once unwanted symbols of an abandoned town are actually functional as both DIY materials and decorations as well. Balloon gifts are so much more appealing, as they actually give useful stuff like DIYs and sometimes just straight up bells. I wouldn't blame you necessarily if you think that the gifts that you get from balloons are not all that interesting, but let me assure you, it's a heck of a lot better than getting only the balloon furniture set like we did in New Leaf. Who thought that was a good idea? So, with all this in mind, is Animal Crossing New Horizons the best Animal Crossing game? My wholehearted opinion is that yes, it is. It has admittedly fallen short of the very high expectations that I had for it, but pound for pound, it's still a very solid game. I really think that a lot of the reason for people liking the older games is heavily influenced by nostalgia, and I'm guilty of this myself. So after looking at it as objectively as I can, I really do think that it's the best in the series, but I would love to hear what your thoughts on it are. Leave your thoughts in the comments whether you agree or disagree with me. Are my criticisms and compliments fair? Let me know. Until then, though, thank you so much for watching. Hey, I pulled a lot of these clips in the video from my Twitch channel, where I stream plenty of Animal Crossing content on. I'd love to see you there, and follow me on all the socials that you see on the screen or in the description. Until next time, though.